The Beatles' All You Need Is Love is arguably the most representative song of the mid to late 1960s. In just a few words, it captured the goals of young people who wanted to change the world through peace and love. It was a song for those who were more interested in spiritual values, companionship, and sharing ideas than money or consumption, similar to the Beatles themselves. With such a far-reaching impact, let's take a look at the story behind this enchanting and blissful song. In 1967, the BBC commissioned the Beatles to write a song for their new television program, Our World. This program was the first live international satellite broadcast in history and connected 5 continents to watch performances by artists from 14 countries. Representing Great Britain, the Beatles were asked to compose a song that was simple and had a positive message. This song was All You Need Is Love. The group performed the song for the live broadcast on June 25th, 1967 at EMI Studios and were accompanied by an impressive group of friends. Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, Marianne Faithfull, Keith Moon, Eric Clapton, Graham Nash, and many others were all in attendance and sang parts of the chorus along with the band. Everyone was dressed in psychedelic and hippie fashion, wearing extravagantly colorful outfits to represent the positivity of the song's lyrics. Both John and Paul took a shot at writing a song for the program. Paul says, "John and I just got together and thought, and I wrote one, and John wrote one, and we went to the session and we just decided to do his first. By the time that we had done the backing track for John's, we suddenly realized that his was the one. So we've still got mine ready to do for the next one, which is of a similar nature in its simplicity, but with a different message." Interestingly enough, some people believe that the song Paul was working on was Your Mother Should Know. But as Paul says, the group decided on All You Need Is Love, which was credited to Lennon-McCartney, but conceived by John. As an advocate for peace and love, John wanted to create a song that reminded the world that love is a stronger force than hate. Although powerful in meaning, the lyrics are simple, mostly consisting of All You Need Is Love or Love Is All You Need. Other than that, there are 2 verses that give a reassuring message to be who you are, with lines such as, "Nothing you can do, but you can learn how to be you in time," and "There's nowhere you can be that isn't where you're meant to be." This message stays on theme with spreading love, as self-expression was a huge part of the counterculture or flower power generation, which came to a peak in the late 60s. The Beatles were proud that this message would be reaching such a large and diverse audience, as they understood its importance. George says, "Because of the mood of the time, it seemed to be a great idea to perform that song while everybody else was shown knitting in Canada or Irish clog dancing in Venezuela. We thought, well, we'll sing All You Need Is Love because it's a subtle bit of PR for God." Ringo was also a huge fan of the song. He says, "The writers of the song were masters at hitting the nail on the head. It was for love and bloody peace. It was a fabulous time. I even get excited now when I realize that's what it's for, peace and love. People putting flowers in guns." While the lyrics are minimal, the orchestral arrangement is grand. George Martin, the band's producer, was given free rein by the Beatles to compose the arrangement. Martin came up with the idea of introducing the song with La Marseillaise, the French national anthem, and concluded the song with a coda containing segments from Greensleeves, In the Mood, and a Bach invention. Additionally, at the end of the coda, John threw in Yesterday and Paul threw in She Loves You, although that is actually debated amongst Beatles fans, some saying it was John. After watching the video closely though, I believe it is Paul who starts singing She Loves You, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then John comes in the second time. But either way, John and Paul both had the same idea. They wanted the end of the song to sound crazy and almost chaotic. The song was recorded at Olympic Studios on June 14, 1967, giving the Beatles just under 2 weeks before the broadcast to put it together. The recording session was unusual and vastly different from the others. John says, "We just put a track down because I knew the chords. I played a harpsichord and George played a violin, because we felt like doing it like that, and Paul played double bass. They can't play them, but we got some nice noises coming out, and then you can hear it going on, because it sounded like an orchestra, but it's just those 2 playing the violin. The way All You Need Is Love was recorded is therefore such a perfect testament to the band's love of experimentation. They wanted to mix things up in the studio and to make their lyrically simple song more interesting." Even the engineer and tape operator the Beatles worked with on the song, George Keans, noticed their love of experimentation. He says, "The Beatles were very opportunistic and very positive. At one point, we accidentally made a curious sound on the tape, and they not only wanted to keep it in on the recording, they also asked us to deliberately repeat the same sound again. Other groups would have been annoyed, but the Beatles capitalized on the mistake. The band was confident outside of the studio, specifically when planning how they would perform during the broadcast. John decided to sing his lead vocal live, setting off a chain of brave decisions. Paul announced he would play his bass live, proving the friendly competition between the two was well alive. Then they convinced George to play his tricky guitar solo live, which he was nervous for. While George Martin tried to dissuade the boys, fearing that they would mess up in front of millions of viewers, they were set in their decisions and knew the choice was ultimately up to them. Ringo was the only one in the clear, as his drums couldn't be played live because they would interfere too much with the microphones recording the orchestra. On the day of the broadcast, the band did about 10 rehearsal takes in EMI Studio 1, where the BBC crew was preparing for the filming. The studio was very chaotic. With the band practicing and the many guests piling in, John was said to be especially nervous, more than anyone had ever noticed before, as he was afraid of forgetting the lyrics. George was also feeling nervous about messing up his guitar solo. Amidst take 57, the broadcast began. For a few seconds, audiences could hear this take, until the camera cut to George Martin telling the tape operator to kill it. The Beatles then waited for the tape to rewind and the orchestra to start playing La Marseillaise, the song's intro. This started take 58, the official take for Our World, performing the song that would come to represent their generation, its youth, and its goals. Just a few hours after the broadcast was over, George Martin and a team of engineers began preparing the recording for the single. They edited George's guitar solo by putting a wobble on it, put 2 lines in the second verse to correct John's vocals and the lyrics, and redid Ringo's snare drum roll, which he decided to do live last minute. Finally, All You Need Is Love was released as a single with Baby You're a Rich Man on the B-side, in the UK on July 7, 1967, and in the US on July 17th. And despite the changes made, no one could really notice that the song had been tweaked. The song was also released at the height of the Vietnam War, which those who were part of the countercultural movement were strictly against and consistently protested. Therefore, it became a song that represented the resistance to the war and its violence. While many people supported the song and its message, others criticized it and found it to be idealistic and oversimplified. But the thing is, the Beatles might have sang "It's Easy," but they knew achieving universal love wasn't actually easy. Upon reflection of the song in 1971, John says the following: "I think if you get down to basics, whatever the problem is, it's usually to do with love. So I think All You Need Is Love is a true statement. It doesn't mean that all you have to do is put on a phony smile or wear a flower dress and it's gonna be alright. Love is not just something that you stick on posters or stick on the back of your car, or on the back of your jacket or on a badge. I'm talking about real love, so I still believe that. Love is appreciation of other people and allowing them to be. Love is allowing somebody to be themselves, and that's what we do need." The Beatles understood that to live in a world where love is truly the guiding force would be a hard place to get to. But why is it such a bad thing for them to have used their platform that had so much influence and impact for good? To tell people to love one another. The song's omission of the serious problems that were prevalent during the mid-60s does not mean that they were ignoring them. They were just choosing to sing about love. The perfect way to describe their agenda, and more specifically John's, when writing this song was, his role was the poet, not the political organizer. The Beatles were well aware of their influential position in society at the time. As icons of the countercultural movement, they knew that their song had an impact on the way young people would see the world and behave towards it. And I think that's what makes this song so special and so important. It is a musical landmark that represents the purely positive message of the 1960s, one that our world could benefit from today. Thanks so much for watching, and special thanks to contributing author Leah Robbins. Be sure to check out some of our other videos on music, such as Why Did Freddie Mercury Write Bohemian Rhapsody?, The Story Behind Toto's Africa, and if you're a Beatles fan, well, let's just say this is your channel. Thanks to the amazing patrons who keep this channel alive, and if you're into super underground music, then definitely check out the Hollyhobs on Spotify, Apple Music, and everywhere music is streamed. If you want to be notified when new videos are out, at this point you'll have to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and pray that YouTube will recommend anything you actually might want to see. If you have an idea for a video, please be sure to leave a comment. See you next time.